Happy Friday. Growth is hard, isn't it? Growth is hard, but we don't decide to make any change in our lives until the fear of staying the same outweighs the fear of what we have to do to change, right? So I was 32 years old at the time, and I realized I was more afraid of heart disease and diabetes than what it would take to unpack my food issues and anything else underneath that was causing the way I was going. So you see, I was willing to do what it took to push off heart disease and diabetes because I've seen what it's done in my family and in people I love around me. But at the time, I was over 300 pounds. And actually, I had been over 300 pounds for a very long time. I was gestationally diabetic with 2 out of 3 of my pregnancies. I was on insulin for 1 of them, and I was also preeclamptic during that pregnancy, both of those things resulted in a preemie and some things that, I'm still feeling sad about, but it was just what it was. I have had 2 miscarriages, lots of infertility treatments over the years. And even my last pregnancy I was gestationally diabetic as well. But I simply managed that with diet and exercise. This was before any kind of nutrition journey. Don't think I'm a hero or any kind of crazy person. But I knew how bad gestational diabetes could get, and I was willing to do anything it took to not have to be on insulin again. Okay, so I was seeing a maternal fetal medicine doctor for the gestational diabetes with my 3rd pregnancy or my 3rd child, and I knew that maternal fetal medicine meant seriousness, like it was a big deal, and so what I had to do was simply check in with him every week. I had to log all my food. I had to log 4 times a day, pricking my fingers with the glucose meter. And then I had to take a picture of all my charts and email it in every week I think it was every Friday, for the doctor and nurse to take a look at it. And what they would do is they would just send me back suggestions or comments or just encouragement. And essentially it was nutrition coaching. It was lifestyle coaching. It was helpful. But there was this one time, I won't forget this, because it kind of is something that's still rooted in me. But I called the doctor's office because I was like, my blood sugar is way too high, and all I had was a salad. So the nurse said, Danielle, read to me the ingredients of the salad bag. So I did, and she, and then she's like, Danielle, where's the protein? In that moment, I learned how protein is invaluable to blood sugar regulation. And I learned that is another macronutrient to not forget about, and how much it really does affect my life. But what I also didn't realize, and what I learned, is that salads do not equal health. Salads do not mean it's a balanced diet. Salads do not mean low calorie. And that was a big thing. So push that aside. After giving birth to my last child, I told you I gained a ton of weight. I was over 300 pounds, and just life sucked. Life sucked. I was winded going up the stairs. Life sucked. Let's just say that. I had people, though. God has always provided. He's always provided people to speak into my life, encourage me, and encourage me to take care of myself and help me be focused on what's important. I had God nudging me to care for myself and to finally break free of the bondage of food, but what was also having me go to the food, okay? So I sought out professional Christian counseling, and that therapist was phenomenal. She walked me through what was going on underneath. She knew right away, but she let me come to it. And the biggest thing that was happening underneath was codependency. I didn't understand what that meant because I didn't grow up in an addicted household. How could I be codependent? Let me read to you this definition of codependency. Codependency underlies all addictions, and for me, it was food. The core symptom of dependency manifests as reliance on a person, a substance, or a process. So for example, like a process that has to do with an activity or a gambling thing or sex addiction. Instead of having a healthy relationship with yourself, you make something or someone else more important, over time, your thoughts, feelings, and actions revolve around that person, activity, or substance, and you increasingly abandon your relationship with yourself. Okay, I'm not going to read that again, but you can replay that if you want to hear that again. Codependency in my life, for example, looked like doing all the good things to an excess. Looked like people pleasing. I had no boundaries. I had none. I was not able to say no. I was overcommitting myself. Essentially, I was losing myself in all the things, good, bad, ugly, whatever. And food was included. And I never did anything on a small scale. I still don't. But I never did anything on a small scale. I was always all in or all out. And I still struggle with that part. So what I want to walk you through today is 4 things to think about. So if you're struggling with some place in your life and you need growth, okay, and you want to get to that point of growth, there are 4 things, especially with codependency and those kinds of things. I'm going to talk about codependency, but it can be applied across any other issue, okay? So the first thing I want you to think about is abstinence. Yes, abstinence simply means stopping doing a certain behavior. So when we're over focused on others or how others make me feel or make us feel, we slide into codependency. When we abstain from allowing people the power over our thoughts, feelings, and actions, we're practicing abstinence. When we learn to focus on ourselves, where we end and another person begins, where we can pour into ourselves spiritually, by having time in the Bible, having time with personal study, with small groups, when we're building relationships with our spouse, our kids, our family, spending quality time, when we're eating healthy and we're exercising, we're doing all the things that encompass what wellness looks like, that's part of abstinence. And you know what's cool about that is that when we stay busy doing those things, we have little time to worry about what other people think, what other people feel, what other people are doing. We have little time to worry about it. But we get to focus on what's important. And this is why I'm constantly asking and saying and professing, what are your priorities? Do those. What are your priorities? Do those. Because when you focus on your priorities, all else seems to just not be a problem or an issue anymore. So the first one is abstinence, staying away from it. The second thing I want you to think about is awareness. Now, denial is a hallmark of addiction. Just like I teach my clients with awareness in their food, that awareness is the most basic thing not to overlook. Simply, for example, food, we track our food because whether we overeat or undereat or whatever, it doesn't matter. We're still aware. It doesn't matter as long as you're tracking and just aware of what somehow, some method of knowing what's going in, what's going out, how you feel, all that kind of thing. But when we aren't aware of our feelings and we aren't aware of what is going on, it's easy to deny. Did you hear that? When we aren't aware, it's easy to deny. It's easy to just push things aside and whatever. We can deny our feelings. We can deny our needs. We can deny our emotional needs and quit nurturing ourselves and struggle with real intimacy. You know, you may have grown up in a family where you weren't nurtured. Your opinions and feelings weren't respected. Or maybe your emotional needs weren't quite adequately met. But over time, instead of risking that rejection or criticism, you learn to ignore your own needs. You shut your mouth and you went along with what everybody else was doing because you thought you were wrong, right? Some people have decided to become self-sufficient and find comfort in, listen closely. So these people that may have grown up in learning codependency could start acting out and coping with these mechanisms: sex, food, drugs, work. Work can encompass like your actual job, but it can also be in overperforming. It could also be in, working for acceptance or that kind of thing. But all of this work, all of this thing of denying ourselves, so not being aware, leads to low self-esteem. And then so in order to reverse these destructive type of habits, we have to be aware of them. We have to know. We have to say, oh, I'm aware. And the most damaging obstacle to self-esteem is negative self-talk. And the inner critic that is telling you, oh, you're wrong. You're not perfect enough. You don't have a voice. You don't deserve to talk, that kind of thing. That is all, if you're aware of it, then you can do something with it. So the third thing to think about, so we started with abstinence, awareness. The third thing is acceptance. And I want you to think about acceptance not as what it's not. So body positivity, saying, oh, that's just how he is, or that's just how she is, or, I'm just a loudmouth jerk, and that's just how I am. I was raised that way. That is not helpful. That is enabling. Okay, that's enabling inappropriate behavior. Healing type of acceptance is allowing yourself to say, okay, I acknowledge I have a problem. I acknowledge what is real before me, not what I feel, like my feelings aren't going to dictate what I do, like all of that kind of thing. It's just understanding the real part of life, like what is actually going on. For me, it's a daily chore. And sometimes when I'm having a terrible day, a really exceptionally hard day, I have to remember who I am. First and foremost, I am at the core with everything gone, everything wiped free from my slate. Who I am is a child of God who is imperfect. I have a sin problem, and I need redemption that can only come through Jesus Christ, our living God, Son of Man, Son of God who rose again and has the power of God in him. Okay? That's who I am at the core. What's interesting though is as we keep focusing on our priorities, new little things come up. And we have to accept these new little things that pop out. So for me, it was, food. Food was my first thing. I had to accept I was out of control with my food. Well, then what came out underneath that? Codependency came out. Underneath that, I realized I had anger issues. All these things, it's just one after another. But the more we focus on our priorities and the more we know what is real around us, the more we can handle things. And I wrote down a note real quick that says, remember that self-acceptance is acknowledging what is real and then having a plan in place on how to handle these things that pop up. So that's where a licensed counselor really comes in for help. And that leads me to number 4, action. What are you going to do now that you're aware of all these issues? When you have accepted the reality around you, you will be compelled to take action because you no longer want to live like that. You no longer want to be like that. So I use that terminology for action. I use that. It's where the boots hit the ground. It's where you're actually putting into play what you say you want to do. It's living the life you say you want to believe, or living the life you say you believe. It's living life with integrity. Saying, oh, I got a problem. I'm going to go handle it. I'm going to go take care of it. And I'm going to come right back kind of thing. So I wrote down some notes for this too. And action requires and involves taking risks, venturing outside of your comfort zone. It may involve speaking up, trying something new, going somewhere alone, or setting a boundary. And we talked about boundaries in a video prior to this. It also means setting internal boundaries by keeping commitments to yourself or saying no to your inner critic or other old habits that you want to change. Instead of expecting others to meet your needs and make you happy, you learn to take actions to meet them for yourself and do things that will give you fulfillment and satisfaction in your life. So I'm going to repeat this one more time. When you are ready, when you're at a point where the fear of change, the fear of staying the same is scarier, like me not wanting to get heart disease, me not wanting to get diabetes and so forth, that was scarier to me than what it was going to take to dive in and do the real work for lasting change. Okay. So you get there, you remain abstinent from that behavior. You keep an awareness, you figure out your awareness protocols for you. You accept what is, let go of what isn't, or what you wish it would be, all of that. And the fourth thing is you have to take action because you are compelled to be different. Okay. So when I admitted I no longer had control over what was going on in my life, food and relationally and more, I was able to start the long process of healing and making changes in my life that would allow me to be an active part of life and not on the sidelines of life. In fact, it allows me to flourish. I have zeal for life. Like, I love my life. And if you talk to me now versus when I was in the throes of this kind of behavior, I love my life, and you know it. And now, because I have that zeal and because I have that want of flourishing, I'm able to pour into others. And that, like that whole circle, it comes back full circle. And it's such a joy to have a front seat view of what God does, what he's capable of, if we allow it to happen. I hope you have a great weekend. I'll be back tomorrow.